and white flags dominating the streets of Jerusalem, carried by people who fear what may become of their country. Thousands of Israelis are on strike today, protesting the controversial judicial overhaul proposal, which passed its first bill in the Knesset today. The proposals mean that the powers of the courts will be severely reduced, including an override clause, which means that the government majority can overturn High Court decisions they disagree with. Those in favour of the bill say that it gives more power to the people, as elected officials will decide the laws rather than the unelected judges, whilst those striking believe that the government can abuse this power to bypass illegalities. So, are the judicial reforms better for democracy or harmful to democracy? After 6 weeks of protests and now with wide-scale strikes, is there a chance that the government could U-turn? Is Benjamin Netanyahu's government, while still in its infancy, already feeling the heat? Is Israeli democracy in jeopardy?
So let's get to it. Is Israeli democracy in jeopardy? As always, we begin with our quick fire round, 30 seconds each to lay out your initial stance on the matter, and we'll pick up the conversation from there. Tami Morad Chayo, please take the lead.
Well, we're not facing the devastation of the Israeli democracy, but we are facing a real possibility of a very deep change in democracy. Instead of a liberal democracy, we're going to have a very empty democracy, one where the majority can do whatever they want, and that's not the democracy we intended.
Mr. Ariel Kahana, your take.
Hi, Alice. Thanks for having me. So I would say not only Israel's democracy is not in jeopardy, I would say the opposite. I think if the reform will be approved, maybe not exactly as it was suggested in the beginning, but generally speaking, if a reform will be approved, it will move Israel to a better place in democratic measures. So we are on the right way.
Last but definitely not least, Mr. Ben-Dror Yamini.
Okay, there is no doubt that Israel needs a change. Israel needs a reform, but not this specific reform. And actually, they do not have the majority. I mean, most of the people in Israel, according to all the polls, and according to what we hear from people from the Likud themselves, they do not support this specific reform, which might risk the Israeli democracy. Might.
Okay, and let's please feel free to interact from this point onwards. And let me begin with what may seem perhaps like a provocative question, but I will take my shot at it. Tami, is the backlash really that powerful, or is it just another demonstration with excellent PR?
First of all, it is a very big demonstration with excellent PR, but with good reasons, because it is a really, I've been to all the demonstrations in Jerusalem in the past 6 weeks, and I have to tell you that it's the first time that I've been to a demonstration where you can find people who have voted to almost all the parties of Israel. They come from all sides. You can find religious and non-religious. You can find people who voted for the Likud, people who voted for the Labour Party or for Meretz, who didn't enter the Knesset. And all of these people, it's not about right or left. It's not about peace with the Palestinians or our relationship with, for example, with the world. It's about how we coordinate and how we set our lives here so that we can be a normal state. Israel is very divided. It has always been very divided, and that's part of the Israeli charm, I think. But the only thing that keeps us together and holds us together is that the laws regard everybody, and judges are not political, and we know that there are limits to everything. There are limits.
But Tami,
limits are, not so clear.
Tami, before I would ask Ariel Kahana to tell us whether he thinks it's political or not, I do want to put you on the spot here. Coalition leaders attacking this week the Supreme Court for its expected hearing over the ability or electoral of Netanyahu to be prime minister. So you're saying it is not political. It's about the law, about the state of the judiciary, but isn't the Supreme Court politicizing itself with such a decision in the current climate to hold a hearing on such a contentious issue?
Well, the problem is that the Supreme Court doesn't decide what they want to talk about or to deal with. Someone appealed to the court. The court will answer this appeal according to the law. I think the court, by the way, has already answered this appeal before when the same court has said that even though Netanyahu is facing a trial, even though there is a conflict of interest in some cases for him, he is still eligible to run for office and to be prime minister. So the question has already been answered. The big question now is not about the Supreme Court, but about Netanyahu, who has said before, he said very clearly, I'm not going to touch anything that might smell even lightly by like conflict of interest.
Well,
so it's up to him
some would
now,
argue that Prime Minister is in conflict of interest with anything because he's Prime Minister, but we will not get to that at this point in time. Ariel Kahana, did the coalition underestimate perhaps the scope, the depth of dissent?
So I think, Eli, the coalition definitely did not explain itself, didn't do the hasbara as it should since it was established, actually even since the elections. And I must say that Lapid played it very well until today. After all, let's put aside democracy, let's talk about policy or maybe about politics. Lapid is trying, and the opposition naturally are trying to, I would say, shake the ground under the coalition, under the government legs, and it succeeded to do it. I must say, Netanyahu, as you just discussed, was unable to explain the reform because of legal obstacles. Minister of Justice Yariv Levin actually almost didn't reach out to the public. And so are other ministers especially of the Likud, that just didn't explain what do they want and why are they doing it. And that opens the room for Lapid to make demonstrations and other opposition leaders and of course the movement, which, by the way, it's a good question, who is paying for all those flags that we see and so on. I mean, someone is paying for all that for the campaign, but so someone, things that do not happen alone, I guarantee you. In any case, they played it very well until today. What happened today, I must say, in the Knesset, including Ron Huldai, mayor of Tel Aviv, statement about violence, supportive of violence, and we saw Knesset member of Yesh Atid jumping on the table in the Knesset. I think this day was not that good for the opposition, maybe for the first time since the elections and since the reform was presented. Mm-hmm. But going now to substance in a minute, if we can, I think the reform, generally speaking, is needed. A reform is needed. There is a majority in the public and in the Knesset that agrees that the balances should be changed and come back to the way it used to be many years ago. By the way, Tammy just said that the Supreme Court it's not in his hands to decide what he's discussing and what he's not discussing. So that's not accurate. I would just say it's not that accurate, because many years ago the Supreme Court was not taking every case, and definitely not political cases that were brought to him. And they decided,
nothing
go big,
happens in a void, and the political climate should at least be taken into consideration. I can assume, at least. Ben-Dror Yamini is speaking to the point that Ariel Kahana was making about the inflammatory statements of the Tel Aviv mayor, saying dictatorships only become democracies again with bloodshed. Are we nearing anarchy? Are the protests reaching a point of being counterproductive in the sense that it will only solidify the coalition stance here?
Okay, first of all, this kind of declarations, like the declaration of the mayor of Tel Aviv when he was interviewed and speaking about spilling blood, I mean, this is counterproductive. It has nothing to do with the protest. It has nothing to do with the demonstrations. Yes, we have some people, extreme right, extreme left, and extreme north and extreme south, whatever, that have this kind of declaration. Leave them alone. This is not, let's speak about the substance. And when we speak about the Samson, just for example, as a big supporter of change.
I'm sorry to cut Ben-Dror. But it must be said that calls for bloodshed came only from the left side and not by unknown people. The mayor of Tel Aviv and the reporters, journalists, Raviv Drucker, those are leaders, and they called people. They called for bloodshed. It's unbelievable.
And a Knesset member, come on, this game is not the big story. I can answer you with what Tali Gottlieb said about the president of the Supreme Court, which was awful. Awful things are expressed by both sides.
But she didn't call for bloodshed, and that's what they did.
Come on, please, let's not go to this kind of game. The real story is the substance. And when we give, for example, like the bill that not passed but began today, of giving the coalition the majority to nominate judges, this is what is dangerous. This is the main problem. I want change. I want reform. So many articles I wrote against this judicial activism, but nobody from the people who criticized the Supreme Court because of many reasons. And I was one of the journalists who wrote more than any other one against the Supreme Court. I cannot accept this kind of reform, which is really put the whole democracy in risk. That's not what we wanted, and we have to bear it in mind. It's not the change that we wanted, and I'm so glad that so many people from the right-wing parties are not supporting this kind of reform, and I do hope that they will make the change.
We do not see a political manifestation of this alleged right-wing opposition to the reform. Are we likely to see defectors? Is any one of you predicting such a scenario?
We cannot predict. We can hope. We can hope that the declaration of the president of Israel yesterday, he was shaking and trembling when he spoke. It came from his heart. It was not political. I do hope that both sides will accept his proposal in order to come and speak, because there is a solution. They can compromise, and they must compromise for the sake of Israel.
Okay, we will dive in deeper into Herzog's outline after the break. But Tami, do you expect any defectors from the Likud?
Well, I can only hope for some defects. The sounds that we hear that there are quite a few of the Likud members of Knesset who are feeling extremely uncomfortable with the way the coalition is dealing with this this crisis.
So uncomfortable that they will move to the other side. Ariel, in one word.
No, but the one who will move is actually Yariv Levin and Simcha Rotman. They will not defect, but they're going to change the proposal. They already made changes. Will be in any case.
Ariel Kahane, you're staying with us. A short break, and we're back with part 2 of the summit. Welcome back. Still with us, Tami Morad Chayo, Ben-Dror Yamini, and Ariel Kahane. Thank you all so very much for staying with us. We're also staying on topic, of course, but before we get back to our conversation, I-24 News anchor and correspondent Hamza Salhout is in Jerusalem at the Israeli parliament where the mass protest took place today. So where do we go from here? Here's more from Hamza Salhout.
Around 90,000 demonstrators outside of the Israeli parliament building where we are right now. Benjamin Netanyahu accusing the opposition of instilling anarchy among the citizens. People flocking from all across the country to come here and make their voices heard against the judicial overhaul. Now, this will have a lot of ramifications legally, economically, socially, on the immigration scale. Critics are saying that Benjamin Netanyahu's government could actually crumble because of this. The opposition is now pleading their case to members of the prime minister's own Likud party to not go along with these judicial overhaul reforms that they say will damage Israel's democracy and only damage the nation.
So let's get to it. Could this entire crisis break up the Benjamin Netanyahu government? Another quick fire round, and we take it from there. Ariel Kahane, please take the lead.
I'm sorry, Eli, what is the question? Sorry.
Whether this could all break up the Benjamin Netanyahu coalition?
Oh, no. I don't see it happening. No, I don't see it happening. Actually, I was told by Minister Levin, which I interviewed last week, that he will change the reform. Wortman, as I said, will change the reform. It will be more moderate. And therefore, I believe the government will survive for at least 3 years.
Okay, Ben-Dror Yamini, your thoughts?
I don't think that the coalition is going to break up only because of the reform. I think they are quite united. I think that there are, and we could hear already some voices from the coalition members who are saying, no, we don't need this kind of reform. And I'm glad that they are saying it. We had two, Yuli Edelstein and David Bitan, but they are not going to be the only two people who will say that they are against this kind of reform. I guess some other people, and according to what my friend, my colleague Ariel Kana said, yes, they are calling for change, and I hope that the change is going to take place.
Tami Molad Chayo, the floor is yours.
Yeah, well, I don't think the reform is going to break up Netanyahu's government. But they have two other big issues on the table, which they have not addressed yet. The first one is the annual budget of Israel, which they have not even addressed in any way at all, and they have to pass it till the end of March. And the second is building the settlements and the response from the United States, which will require some kind of a dialogue within the government.
Yes, and before we get back to our conversation, reality check. Our senior producer, Natasha Shargatova, is updating us that the 20-year-old border police officer that we reported earlier in the show is critically being wounded in yet another terror attack in Jerusalem, has succumbed to his wounds. 2 terror attacks in 2 hours today in Jerusalem, just 3 days after another fatal attack. Definitely something that the Benjamin Netanyahu government will have to address immediately. Back to our conversation now. You're all talking about certain modifications, certain compromise. Is the Herzog outline really a compromise or more like a surrender for one side, either, both? Ben-Dror?
No, it's not a surrender, not at all. I mean, it's something which can be worked out and a good base for a kind of a compromise. I mean, from both sides, we could hear that it is acceptable. We do need to hope that they will sit and not give any kind of par conditions, because we need it. We need this kind of compromise. But yes, and it should be kind of beginning.
But tell me, what is the end game for protesters here?
First of all, stopping the legislation until dialogue starts, a real dialogue about, the real question is, what are the real interests behind this reform? Is it really just a philosophical issue about how the Knesset should react to the court and the court to the Knesset, or is there something else? Because if we look at the legislation that they're trying to pass now, aside the reform, then well, it's quite frightening. There are some of the laws they're trying to pass. First, the Deri law, in order to which actually means just ignoring the courts, and then there are all kinds of other very strange laws regarding issues of religion and state, which are. Well, it's a big problem in the Israeli society, and up till now we have been able to walk between the lines and somehow pass it on. But they don't. They want it all. The ultra-Orthodox want to get their laws about getting into the army passed, and then there are settlers, Smotrich, what he wants is more money and more settlements. Well,
yes, elected representatives are trying to promote the agenda they've been elected for. No?
Well, that's fine, but you don't change. If you have to change the whole system in order to promote what you have promised, then there is a problem with what you have promised, and they know that there's a problem with what they have promised.
And
so,
Ariel, yes, please, Tommy. Sorry, conclude. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah. I'm just saying, democracy doesn't work that way. You can't just, you can't just shuffle the whole game and change the rules just because it doesn't work for you, because you want to play a different game. Israeli democracy is gentle. It's fragile because Israeli society is so divided. And what is happening now is actually trying to change the rules of the game. So what we need to do, first of all, we need to stop. Everybody has to stop for a minute and then sit with the president. And I think his suggestion was a good basis for dialogue. But the first part of it was just stop for a minute.
Yeah.
Wait.
Yeah. Take a deep breath. Yes. Ariel.
Okay. No, I want to disagree with. I just want to say that I don't think that the Israeli society is so divided. Maybe the politicians are highly divided, but not the Israeli public, because according to all the polls that were published, right-wing polls, center polls, professional polls, we could see the same kind of result. Something like between, it depends on the poll, but something like between 70 to 80% of the people in Israel they want reform, but not this kind of reform. We have to bear it in mind. So it's not the public opinion, it's not the Israeli public which is divided, it's the politicians that are divided.
So, Ariel, is the crisis merely increasing the prospect of a unity coalition of sorts?
No, I don't see it early. I think the current coalition, the current government is very coherent, I would say. Actually, it's all parties agree strongly about the reform, about the need to have a reform. Again, maybe it won't be exactly what we saw until today, but a reform will be, and they agree about it. And as Tammy said, yes, they want to change the rules of the play, and that's not a new idea. Yariv Levin is pushing for it for at least 20 years that I know, because I was talking with him about it almost 2 decades ago. Yeah. And of course he was not the only one, as Ben-Dror mentioned. So they all agree about it, and other parts of the society agree about it. And maybe we see divisions about other issues. But again, this coalition is a coherent one. They support each other. And I believe that just after Netanyahu's trial will end in one way or another, that's the one and only scenario I see. How can Benny Gantz join the government? But it looks very, very far from today.
Let's hope that middle ground will be found between such strikingly opposing world views, and perhaps more so, as Ben-Dror Yamini accurately said, between the elected representatives, not so much among the people. Ben-Dror Yamini, Tammy Morat-Chayo, and Ariel Kahana, thank you so very much for your time and insight. Pleasure, as always, to be speaking to you.
Thank you.
Thank you all.